Hello, students from the Zoning for Equity class. My name is Monkkonen, professor at UCLA, and with my colleagues, we're, recording videos about positionality and reflexivity in research and advocacy. So we have these questions that we're going to be answering in case you're interested, to learn about us and how we think about this stuff. So the first one is how my inherited and acquired characteristics, such as race and class, among others, have shaped my privileges or lack thereof. Well, as a white American man in the year 2022, I can think of many examples of how my inherited characteristics have influenced the way people treat me and my position in different kinds of settings. At least I think certain things have happened because of these characteristics, and it's one of these things where you can think about it a lot and you're not sure whether that was why something happened or didn't happen. But there have been many instances in my life of how people's reactions to me has affected my decisions as well, right? And then you think I shouldn't act that way because that's what is expected of me. So easy to overthink this stuff, but also important to reflect on it. I can think of many examples. One I thought I would give was about before COVID. I was pretty involved as a volunteer at my daughter's elementary school. I'm thinking about this one because I'm probably going to be a room parent again this year. My daughter's in 5th grade. And this was a space that in the year 2019 or whatever it was almost entirely mothers still, right? So this volunteering at school, which was shocking to me. I guess it shouldn't have been, but it also meant that as a father, I was treated kind of like, oh, he's doing this thing where he's going above and beyond, and he's so great, and which was kind of, on the one hand, you want to feel good about yourself when people compliment you, but on the other hand, it's like, well, it shouldn't be that way, right? It shouldn't be the case that people are extra nice to me because it's traditional for women, and so that's something enraging that I have thought of. But the second question is how my inherited and acquired characteristics, such as my position as a professor, among others, affect the power relations I experience in political, community organizing, and policymaking setting. So again, I can think of several examples, how the position of academic gives you certain privileges or certain expectations, carries with it certain expectations in advocacy and meetings, public meetings, et cetera. This has been especially true in international settings. So I've done some policy work in Mexico and in Asia. When I was a professor at the University of Hong Kong, I worked as a consultant for the World Bank in Indonesia and the Philippines. And it was, in many cases, I thought pretty easy to see that people were making assumptions or treating me in a certain way because I was the American white man in this setting, making, making assumptions about my role and knowledge. I experienced many kind of outwardly sexist and racist moments during those times. And one thing, I've tried to use my positionality in that sense in these kinds of professional spaces to challenge institutions. I think this is something that planners can think about as they go into professional practice, kind of what are the expectations of a professional planner and how you can subvert them a little bit in order to kind of change people's minds or encourage people to do things. But then there's this risk of doing it too much and then getting recategorized, right? So this experience I had committee meeting for the Southern California Association of Governments. I was on this committee for the housing planning, the fair share housing planning system in SoCal a couple of years ago that I think I talked about in one of the recorded videos of this class. And in the beginning, they brought me on as the academic, and that carried with it certain expectations. But throughout, I started using that position to challenge other committee members and the process itself around issues of segregation by race and ethnicity. And I think at some point then they were like, oh wait, he's not this kind of academic, maybe he's like a more radical academic. And so then eventually they kicked me off the committee, right? So I think that you can subvert your category for some period of time, but maybe being strategic is important because your category can change in people's minds as they get to know. The last one is how my inherited and acquired characteristics, such as cultural, religion, gender, and place of family, among others, shape my idea of housing and what a typical image of a home is to me, and what is my ideal home. So that was an interesting question for this class, especially, right? I come very much from the tradition of kind of US valorization of single family home ownership. I think that's why I'm so mad about it and working hard to subvert it at this point in my life. But this idea where kind of it's just the quote unquote normal thing to do, you know, as someone gets older, these markers of adulthood, buy a home is one of them, and a home being a single family home, right? So this something I talk about often in classes is about the US planning system categorizes single family homes as residential, and every multifamily is kind of not residential, right? It's kind of other, and this otherization of rental housing and multifamily housing. So yeah, my parents are from Minnesota, and so they're, you know, I grew up in a single family home. And it's funny that even though I've been a housing researcher for a long time, I don't know how long, 15 years or so, I worked for a long time on international housing research and didn't really start to question this US issue. I mean, I did a little bit, but not deeply or personally until kind of the last decade or so after I had purchased a single family home, right? So I bought and owned a single family home, and it's been an interesting journey over the last decade. You know, my anger at this system has grown a great deal, and living in a single family home and owning one has really driven home all the practical problems, the antisocial features of a large lot single family home zoning. You know, experienced it firsthand, so that's been helpful for my research and advocacy on ending this scourge on American cities. It's also helpful that these aren't helpful as I talk about in the meetings, one of the recordings is that I live now in the city I grew up in, and so you know it's especially poignant, all these problems. Cool. I hope that was interesting, and I'm happy to talk about more of this stuff with you if you want. Just reach out via email or whatever. Thanks. I hope you're doing well.